Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tapping Your Creativity in my studio today. I am so excited to have Robert Szot join us today. He will be joining us live at any minute now. He's going to tell us all about his fabulous abstract contemporary work. And there he is. Hi,
Hello.
Robert. How
How
are
are
you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to have you in my studio today and in your studio today, and for you to give me the time and the opportunity to join us in this.
I turn.
You're good.
Uh, I thought I had turned my notifications off. I'm quite certain I did, and I immediately get a phone call from somebody. I apologize about that. Sandra, it's nice to be with you. I appreciate the invitation. So good afternoon from a rather humid, rainy New York City. So thank you for having me.
Yes, I am so thankful that you took the time and your time to donate a piece for Feeding America and for this incredible journey that I have started, and all this, what I call my army of artists are helping me out, and in turn, as a community of artists, we're giving back to people in need that need us more now than ever. And so thank you, Robert. So I'm so excited because I know a lot of people know about you, but a lot of people don't know about you. So will you tell us your name, where you live, where is your studio, and what type of artwork do you do?
Sure. My name is Robert Szot. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I've been here for approximately 20 years, to be more accurate, 19 years. I've been a professional artist in New York for the past maybe 12 or 13 of those years. So I've had quite a bit of luck navigating the art world in New York City, enough to at least make a living at it and spend my time in the studio where I feel like I not only want to be, where I feel like I belong. I'm a painter primarily. I do abstract paintings, oil and charcoal on linen. And I also do works on paper, which typically start out as either a monotype or an etching. Uh, and then I'll add collage elements and crayon and gouache and other mixed media to them. So, for all intents and purposes, they're paintings on paper as well.
So tell us a little bit about your background. I know you were born in New York, but then you moved to Texas, and you graduated from the University of Texas, Austin, with
Mhm.
a journalism degree. So
Yeah.
very far out from art, I guess.
Yeah, originally from New Jersey, actually, born in Morristown, but didn't spend a lot of my life there. We left when I was approximately 2.5 years old, and we moved to Texas. So I claim myself a Texan just about everywhere I go. That state certainly holds a lot of meaning for me, and
Yeah.
will always be my home. So I grew up in Houston. I have two older brothers. Uh, I had a mother and father that have always been very supportive of not only my personality quirks, but also in supportive in what I choose to do with my life. So when I became an artist and when I became an independent artist, I think they were really quite thrilled for me. So it's always been nice to have that kind of familial support, and now getting support on the internet. Uh, for example, the Instagram community, which has been nothing but kind and generous in all of their compliments and comments. Um, I
Well,
went.
because your artwork kind of speaks for itself. You have such a body, a strong body of work that you have created for yourself, and people respond to that, and so in turn they respond to you.
I, I really appreciate that, and the response again, it's sort of an embarrassment of riches where. Time and time again, you seem to be backed up by a community of virtual strangers that seem to be on your side, be committed to what you're doing, and always be interested in what you're doing. And I'm extremely grateful to have that kind of an audience, certainly. So.
Yes. So how did you jump from journalism then to art? And what made you decide, this is a good path for me?
Well, for a long time, I was convinced that I was Charles Bukowski or the next Hunter S. Thompson. I've always enjoyed the kind of raw honesty artists and writers like the two of them have put so freely on display for public consumption. It's always been a bit of a mystery to me that someone could be so open with who they are as a person, and despite whatever criticism or backlash they get from that, that they're able to kind of continue down that lineage and stay true to who they are. And I mean, Bukowski wasn't a great guy, and Hunter S. Thompson clearly had his problems as well. But it never, like, those things never pushed me away from that core honesty that I always admired so much. I think that admiration transferred over to artists like Francis Bacon, for example, who clearly had his problems. He had his personality issues and his addiction issues, but the work itself is so compelling and so refreshingly open to me that I'm immediately attracted to it. So I was in journalism school at the University of Texas, quite convinced I could do this. I could be a writer. I could find an audience for the subject matter of me. That's what I wanted to talk about, which I guess sounds egotistical when you say it out loud, but I mean, we're being frank with each other, right? So, so it's kind of a funny story because about 6 months before I graduated, I was out front of one of my journalism classes smoking a cigarette, and I would always smoke with the professor of the class, this guy named Rusty Todd, and he was the head of the journalism department at the University of Texas, and he was as hard as the last coffin nail. I mean, the man, he wasn't afraid of a drink. He wasn't afraid of getting into scraps with people. He really was that kind of quintessential journalist that you think of whenever you think of like these kind of
whatever image that you have, that
right. Oh yeah, he was a very imposing figure. He was a very powerful figure, and yet I liked him. I liked to talk to him. He would quite frequently embarrass me by taking a cigarette from me and then breaking the filter off of it and then smoking it in front of me, just to kind of, to give me that indication that, listen, like, I am a lot tougher than you will ever be, which I understood, and that was fine. So anyway, about 6 months before I graduated, we were out smoking a cigarette in front of class before class started. One of the rare times I actually went to class. I mean, if we're being totally honest with each other. And he looked at me.
I wonder if he's watching us right now.
I would hope so. So if you're out there, Rusty, you were right. Your journalism wasn't for me, so you were right. So that's when he looked at me and he said that to me. He goes, Robert, I have to be honest with you. He said, I don't really feel like journalism is for you. And he didn't really have to go into a much more detailed explanation than that, because I think subconsciously I had always known that. And I had always known it because my dedication to it wasn't there. I didn't feel like I was doing it enough, or that I had the desire to do it every day. Whereas painting, if I don't come to the studio, even if I skip a day, it feels very weird to me. It's very much become an ingrained part of my life, and that's why I don't really take vacations or ever leave New York City. I mean, other than to go to an exhibition somewhere. But I think it was
do you have a routine set for yourself right now with COVID, and is it affecting you the way that you were painting before, or do you still keep the routine of coming in? Is your studio at home, or do you have to, go somewhere?
My studio is in a building that I own with my brother. It's a townhouse in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, that we bought about a dozen years ago. And what I ended up doing is I converted one of the floors into a studio space for myself. So it's a much smaller studio than I was used to working in. But the fact that I owned it and was not subjected to landlords or being booted out, because I've been kicked out of probably a dozen studios in New York in the 19 years that I've been here. So I traded size for a bit more security.
Does
I
it
haven't.
has it affected you this time that we're living in?
Well, fortunately, not really. I have an apartment that I live in Fort Greene, which is only about 2 local stops on the subway from my studio, which is about 2 miles.
So
And
you've been
so
walking?
I've been walking. Yeah, I've been walking down Atlantic Avenue every day to come to the studio in the morning. And it's actually become quite a pleasant walk for me. I used to take the train, but there's something about that half an hour journey that I don't know. It wakes me up a little bit more in the morning. So fortunately, the pandemic, although it's obviously been something that needs to be considered very carefully, and you have to watch out for crowds, and it's changed a lot of my social habits. Fortunately, I've been able to come and work at the studio every day without any problems. So I'm one of the very lucky people, because I know so many artists that have been unable to get to their studios, unable to get to work, and I can't imagine.
They've been affected in other ways that, that they've been paralyzed in a way that they haven't been able to work or
Right.
create or feel inspired.
Right.
So I think that by doing this type of interviews and going into artist studios and seeing their work and that they are keeping themselves busy, we are in turn hoping that they will come back and start again. And if you've never painted before, maybe you want to start now, this is a perfect time for you to start now.
No, and I think you're 100% right, because I have been fielding a lot of emails and a lot of direct messages on my Instagram account with just those kinds of questions in mind. I think people are really taking a good hard look at their day-to-day lives, and I certainly encourage people to do that. And if you land on wanting to become an artist or a painter or someone who works in the print medium, certainly it is a great time to consider these things. I mean, you should always, my opinion is you should always be taking a good hard look at yourself all of the time. And it's an exhausting thing to do, but it's just something that it becomes habitual and it becomes necessary. But I think now, being that things have been shut down as badly as they have, people are really investigating like who they are and what their role in society is, which I think is great. I mean, it's great. And I encourage people to continue sending questions to me, sending me emails. I have time to answer them. I'm happy to correspond.
I just saw a question actually that I think it's interesting. Someone asked, if you went from a narrative journalism career to a non-narrative painting career, and do you see any connections in there or not?
I can tell you this: my goal has always been to either write about or paint about or openly discuss who I am as a person. My subject matter has always been who I am, and whether that be translated through writing, whether it be translated through abstract painting. I always want me to come through on everything that I produce. I know that's a bit of a sentimental way of looking at things, but it's the subject I know best, and it's the one that I can't seem to get away from. So I've just decided to embrace it.
Robert,
what's that?
do you keep a journal?
I used to. I don't know. I found it a bit embarrassing, to be honest with you.
Even for yourself, a journal for yourself?
Oh, I think especially for myself. I think it's, I look back at things that I've written, some of my cretinous thoughts on a certain day, and it's like looking at older paintings that you've done, right? It's not that you think that they're bad or that they don't represent you correctly, but there might be something that you want to go in there and you want to change. Like, I always seem to be wanting to kind of revise history of my own life. I don't know. I embarrass quite easily. So I think keeping like a permanent record, like a journal, is it's something that is definitely going to come back to haunt me at some point. So no, I stopped doing that. I mean, isn't this exposure enough? Like, I mean, come on, this is this is the best I can do, you know.
I guess so. I mean, we started when this wasn't part of our growing up, social media and,
Right.
and the way of, you know, showing work, and, you know, the work that we see out there is sometimes very curated by the artist. And so sometimes it's not the real thing that you're seeing. Sometimes
Right.
it's just the detail of the painting that you're seeing. And it has effects on it. And it's, you know, it's totally digitalized to
Right.
today's world.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes you don't realize that it takes so much work and effort to get to that point where you have a finished painting.
Certainly, I mean, and not just a finished painting, but something that you're willing to let go out into the world and be subjugated to strangers' opinions and their wants and desires. And
Yeah.
a lot of those strangers are willing to openly not only discuss the work, but also add their opinions to it. And it is something that artists and people that put themselves in the public life, it's something they have to get used to. It's a lot of exposure, and it's a lot of sort of laying everything out to bear for people that you don't know to take in. And you hope it goes well, you know, but it's not always going to go well, certainly.
So
maybe I'll write that in my journal later.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I'm going to start taking notes and send them your way. Tell us a little bit about your process and how you start a white canvas. And do you have a composition in mind? Do you have a color palette in mind? How do you work?
I am not a fan of what I call idea art. And what I mean by that is that I don't like, I shouldn't say I don't like, but I'm not attracted to art that has a message in it or art that is supposed to be digested in a specific way. I'm not someone that starts a painting with any other notion in my head other than it's time to start this painting. I have a table of paints, which is a colossal mess. You can see. That's my painting table. And so it really is one of these things where you just go at the work. And what I mean by that is it's very responsive in nature. So a white painting, like a white canvas for me, will typically start out much like a monotype starts out for me, which I just need to bring in some kind of a structure to build off of. And typically that would be just a lot of black lines dissecting the canvas and the entirety of the canvas. Because I need something to hold on to. I need something to build an idea off of. Starting paintings is a very difficult thing for me, simply because I am at my best when I'm solving problems, typically problems that I create. And so when I'm faced with a blank canvas, there's just nothing for me to wrap my head around. And so I'll start it out with a lot of black lines, much like a Bryce Martin painting, you know, for lack of a better example. And then I'll just begin adding colors. And essentially what will happen is that I will add colors to the point where the canvas is saturated with them. Now, most of my paintings all look the same at about a week in. They all are they're totally covered. They make very little sense even to me. And that is when I begin my editing process, when I start picking out relationships in the composition that I enjoy, that I want to exploit, relationships in the composition that I don't enjoy, that I want to destroy or cover up. And one move, much like a kaleidoscope, one move will lead into maybe 10 or 20 other moves. So it really is just a building process of one argument I have with myself and the solution to that argument. And then it's opened up 2 other arguments, and then now I have to solve those problems as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your artwork is very, like, I would say what a non-objective art is, which has line, mark, geometric forms, texture, color. It has the repetition, the rhythm, the shapes that you create, and all of that start creating a conversation throughout your pieces. And so you're
that's great. That's a great read, and I actually really appreciate you saying that, because essentially what these paintings are is they are conversations I'm having with myself, and they're quite argumentative conversations, and they're quite they're very fussy conversations that I have with myself. If you spent a day with me in the studio, you would probably think a different person was in here, because I'm not a terribly calm or well-mannered or well-spoken person when I'm painting. I actually tend to get quite angry with myself, because, you know, you would like to think that after 2 decades of doing this, that you would have all the answers, that these problems would be solved almost instinctively.
right.
But unfortunately, and I think fortunately, it's not the case. Because there are 2 things. There are 2 driving forces in my life. One is I don't want to be boring. Like, I don't want to bore myself with work. That is probably the primary motivating factor in everything that I do. If I look at something and it's just the same old chestnut, me doing a color that's this large, and these are in relation to it, and I cannot bore myself. The other thing I really want these paintings to do is I want them all to stand on their own and have their own merit, but I also want them to be easily recognizable as work that's all come from the same person. I think if you're going to have any success...
How important do you think that as an artist you have to have a line or a thread for, you know, for saying this is a Robert Szot's painting? Like,
I think it's extremely.
Even if you are, you know, if you're learning new techniques and you want to, you know, apply them to your artwork, and so you are constantly changing a little bit on how you're, you know, how you present yourself. So your strokes might be there, but it's not like, oh my God, that's a Robert Szot. With you, I think that you definitely know that it's a Robert Szot's work of art. And so how important do you think that is?
I think it's extremely important, because he demonstrates not only a seriousness about your work, because you are constantly moving forward, even in small ways. But I think that thread of authorship, I think it betrays this undeniable connection that that person has with their work, that they have spent the 10,000 hours in the studio to not only find out how to paint, but also to find out how to make those paintings connect with who they are as an individual. The most interesting paintings to me are the paintings that I can look at, and if I have no idea who did that painting, or it's somebody who died 50 years ago, that at least I get the sense of, oh, I know the kind of person that did that work. I could recognize in their work bits of their personality, and I could totally be off about what that personality is. I don't know these people, but I still get that sense of connection, that inseparable artist artwork connection that I'm so attracted to. So I don't know how to maintain that authorship other than being in the studio every day, working on these paintings until you personally are satisfied with them. To edit these things down to their very base level, to where you've gotten it so right that you can't even separate yourself from the work.
Right.
And that's that like a, you know, in a literal way, like I can't begin, you know.
Someone hasn't found that voice,
Right.
go out there, research, look what speaks to you back. If that particular color that someone is using, and you keep going back to that color, why is that color so important to you? How are you going to apply that to your painting?
Right.
Direct message to that person and say, what is that color that you're using? I'm really loving that. The shapes, you can go into a fabric store and find patterns that might, that you might like, and take those into consideration and say, why do I like that? And I think once you start asking questions of who you are as an artist and go at it, maybe you can find your voice in a much easier way.
I don't even want you to think of yourself as an artist, really. I just want you to be who you are. And I want to see how that gets transferred onto a canvas. Like, I mean, I'm not an educated artist. I'm not. I mean, my education was books and galleries and museums. And my education was in the studio. My education continues to be in the studio. And it was never about how great of an artist can I be. It is, can I effectively communicate who I am as a person to strangers through this medium? And can I do it in an interesting way? Because
you're a self-taught artist, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah. I took one class, and that was 2 months ago, about etching. I just wanted to learn the chemical process. I didn't want to set a studio on fire with, acid, God knows what else. So I went to the art students thing with my friend and fellow artist Louis Colin, another great artist that I'm very close to here in New York, and we took a month-long etching class where I learned all about ferric chloride and dry point and all that other stuff. So
that's so awesome. That I mean, for people who've never painted, there you go. You have an established, incredible artist who taught himself for discipline of being there every day. What made you stick with oil instead of going to acrylics?
I loved the historic nature of oil paint. That's why I paint on linen as well. Yeah. There's just something about the like reaching back into history like that. Even though my paintings are a million miles away from a Rembrandt or a Bonnard, or there was something about oil paint and the history of oil paint, and then I just ended up getting used to it. I ended up getting used to the medium and how fussy it can be and what you can do with it, and I just stuck with it.
So
and if we could just go back to the thing before where you were telling people that, look, I mean, here's a self-taught person that that worked in the studio and is working in New York. I just want to reiterate, like, these are merely decisions for you to make. They are nothing more than decisions and commitments. The world is not going to fall apart. You understand what I'm saying? This is all just a decision away. And then putting in the time and being serious about it. And I can tell you that at least my experience is that despite all the many uphill battles, especially being here in the city and having to deal with the kind of swings and roundabouts of being an artist in New York, of all of those uphill battles, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't. I've absolutely savored and loved every day for 20 years doing this. And that includes the days I've had to beg Con Edison not to turn my power off. Like, you will have rough days, and they will be difficult times, and there will be no money, and the phone will not ring, and the galleries will not respond to you. These are inconsequential to the long-term goal of, I mean, for lack of a better term, just self-discovery. It's worth doing. It's worth doing. It's worth doing because you become an individual. So.
Yeah, and you have a history to go back to and then look, and then you learn from that history.
100%.
And then, you know, it's a trial and error every time. And
every
I think that, you know, we never stop learning. You always are learning something new, even if you feel comfortable doing the painting and, you know, and resolving the problems the way that you have in the past. It's a way to look back and say, hey, I did that in that painting.
These are watermarks. They're watermarks in your life. They really are. And you could look back and go, look how far I've come in 5 years, and look how far I've come in 10 years, and look at all that I've accomplished. And like, these are serious, hard, tangible things. They are quite literally markers in your life. And there are things to be embarrassed about, and things to be proud of, and things to relish, and things to run away from. And it is a whole myriad of life all coming in at once. And I mean, I know I sound giddy, and I get it. I am a little giddy, to be honest with you. Like that, I will never stop being grateful to have a Tuesday to myself.
That's
that really is what it comes down to.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So this is what we're going to do now. We're going to show up close your work. We're going to talk about your work. And then I'm going to turn off the comments for the minute. Just keep your questions till the end. And then at the end, we're going to talk about where Robert is represented and talk a little bit about what he thinks about galleries today. So right now, I'm just going to turn off the comments, and Robert is going to show us his work.
Well, this is a commission painting that I'm working on right now for some people here in New York City. And
how large is that, Robert?
This painting is 44 inches tall by 66 inches wide, and it is an oil on linen painting. Now, it's a painting that I actually thought was finished initially a couple of weeks back, but now I've decided to go back into, because there were just parts of it that I wasn't relating to. There were parts of it that I thought could be a little bit better. So just be aware that you are looking at an incomplete work. Because I say that because when I look at it on the screen, like, it feels very incomplete to me. And so essentially, the thing that I'm trying to resolve today is that I think you've got all of this activity over here on this left-hand side, which I think is very well developed. There's a lot of very interesting relationships on this left-hand side. Now, the challenge is bringing in the rest of this painting, because I think one of the harder parts about abstract painting, and I think abstract painting in a landscape format like this, is making sure your left and right come together in a cohesive way. And it's not just left and right that you have to consider, it's also the up and down. So you're really having to come at this thing from all sides at all times, trying to bring together the composition. Like, as you can see, there's this sort of wide area, maybe 2/3 of this top part of this painting, that is underdeveloped, that really needs to speak more to this area. So that's the kind of thing I'm working on today.
Let me ask you something. Are you committed when you if you start a horizontal piece, are you committed to keeping it horizontal, or at some point would you switch it around?
Well, in this case, it's a commission painting, so they did have size restrictions and requirements.
Yes, but in general.
In general, no. I typically don't like to turn paintings in the later stages of a work. I think probably, let's say, a week, 2 weeks in, I will definitely stay committed to whatever positioning that painting has taken. But in the first week, when I'm kind of covering things up and like I said, creating those problems for myself, I certainly don't mind taking a painting and putting it on one side or another. But once a painting is finished, certainly that is its orientation, and there's no changing, because I think with complexities like this painting has, for example, if you were to switch the orientation on this thing, it would literally, at least in my opinion, it would literally fall apart.
How long does it take you from start to finish on a commission that large?
I've been working on this painting for 2.5 months now.
Okay, so how do you say to your client, like, this will take me 4 months?
I generally give them an estimated time of anywhere between 7 to 10 weeks.
Okay.
And that way, the thing is, Sandra, and I'm sure a lot of people experience this, when I work on a painting and I think it's finished, if it sits in the studio for any longer than a couple of days after I've finished it, I'm going to get in there and change it. I just am, because I will see things that, this could be improved or this could be better.
Yeah.
So,
fortunately or unfortunately, because then we just keep working at it, even if it was maybe perfect when it was, and then you screw it up.
Right. Well, Francis Bacon said one time that he says, "I'm certain I've destroyed all of my really good paintings."
Yeah.
Because he's just gone over everything again and again, right?
Can you bring us in closer, Robert?
Yeah,
Can you
sure.
bring the phone closer?
Let's see. What is the best way to do this where I can?
Yeah.
Geez, sorry. I'm pretty bad at this. Yeah. So essentially, what you're seeing is just like a lot of thin layers of oil paint, and then I'll come back into that oil paint, and I will get pretty aggressive with it and start scrubbing it out to the point where you could actually see the grain of the linen in certain parts of the painting.
Yeah, you can.
There's something about that transparency that I'm really attracted to. And then you have like compositional elements like directly next to it that tend to be a bit more dense, and so it's a contrast that kind of adds a bit of depth to the work itself.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you want to move now to your work paper, that would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, let me just grab it. Let me put this back up here.
Love the shirt, by the way.
Oh, that's my Salvation Army painting shirt. Thank you.
And at some point, you're going to have to show us your wall that I love so much.
Yeah, Sandra is obsessed with my studio wall. As many people on Instagram are obsessed with my studio wall. I field questions about it all the time. And I promise, if I ever leave this place, I'll cut it up and I'll leave it out on the curb. And if people want it, they can come and get it.
No, not on the curb. You're sending it to me. We have a pact.
So this is a work on paper that I finished recently. It's framed, obviously. And so essentially what you're looking at here is collage elements, crayon. Let me lean it. Maybe you can see it better in the light.
We can see it pretty good.
Okay. And
yeah.
So again, it's much like my paintings, I tend to fuss over these works on paper as well. And again, they all start out as monotypes or abandoned etching projects that I end up.
Has a feeling of cubism almost.
Yeah, this one is one of the more dense, complicated works on paper that I've done recently. If you ask some of the people that are closest to me, they tend to like a more simplistic composition than, say, this, for example. But there's something about the density that, I don't know, I'm really rather attracted to that piece.
What kind of paper do you use?
I use a Reeves heavyweight. I think it's 175 grams.
Oh, that's
it's a very robust paper, because what I tend to do is I tend to cut into the first layer of that paper, and then I'll peel it off. And so it actually adds like a really nice textural element to the works on paper that I wouldn't get with like a lighter gram paper.
Do you have another paper artwork that you can show us?
Not laying around here. I mean, here's an etching that I did recently.
Yeah.
This one's also framed. That is an etching that's
So is that what you learned two months ago?
Yeah, I learned how to do this a couple of months ago. So this is a hard ground etching with dry point. And again, there's a complexity level in that etching that I had not been able to achieve before. So it might,
You like
I don't
it?
know.
Is
I
that
do like it.
you will go back to?
I like etching. I like doing the etchings. There's something kind of cathartic about sitting and taking your time with an etching needle that
Right.
I hadn't experienced before with painting. So
Do you have your catalog around?
I do.
I'm getting my own catalog, by the way, and we'll tell you how to get it. But maybe you can flip through it.
Yeah.
And these are all Robert's latest
Oh.
paperwork.
Yeah, these all came into play within the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So
And they really, I mean, the quality of the catalog that you're going to get is beautiful. It's only $23.
yeah, I'm really happy with it. There's a real great picture of me feeding my stray cat in the backyard of the studio. Look how fat he is.
Oh my God! What did
Yeah,
you
he looks like
feed
a
him?
baby cow. No, no, no. He came that way. He came, I did not make him that fat.
Okay.
He came that way. But yeah, this catalog I put out a couple of months ago. I'm very proud of it. I think it came out quite nicely. And again, it's the benefit of having all of that work kind of in one place, like in that book. It allows a very easy access to the history of my work in the last 5 years, and it allows me to reassess everything, to see where I'm headed, to see where the work is going, and like I said, I'm very proud of it. So
So
thank
I
you for
know
the
that you're
compliment.
represented by Anita Rogers Gallery in New
Yes.
York and
Uh-huh.
Jack Fischer Gallery in San Francisco.
Yes.
So for people that are maybe looking into getting their work into a gallery, would sending a catalog that you just made to a gallery with an explanation of why you would be a good fit into their gallery, would that be a good way to start?
I think it is absolutely essential to make the best, most comprehensive presentation you can when you're introducing yourself to a gallery that may be unfamiliar with your work. Galleries obviously have a lot of influx of artists presenting their work to the gallery in hopes of getting representation or an exhibition. So in order to stand out in somebody's mind, I think it is essential that you present a well-curated, clean, easy to digest presentation of who you are as an artist. That includes also researching the gallery that you are applying to, and as opposed to just sending an anonymous letter saying, "Hi, I'm an artist, and here are some images of my work. Please give me a show." Very typically, galleries will just pass those things over simply because they get so much, so many inquiries like that. So I think the best luck that I've had is sending a catalog like the one I just showed you, along with a personalized letter to the director or the owner of the gallery, not only discussing their artists that they represent, their vision that they're trying to portray with their gallery, but also how you as an artist would fit into that vision. Galleries are looking for partnerships. They want to represent artists that they know will pull on the rope whenever that needs to happen. Not just some random stranger that wants to pop in and have a show. They need a partner more than anything, because it is not free to run a gallery, obviously. And a gallery wants to know that you're there for the work and for the long haul, and that you have the ambition to kind of carry these things through.
So what do you think of artists now using this platform to sell versus going through a gallery? What are your feelings there?
The platform being Instagram,
Just
or
in
just
general,
social media?
Yeah, in general, social media, website, anything but a gallery. What do you think about that?
I think it's crucial to have a website, no matter if you're selling through that website or if you're selling through a gallery. Having a website will get your artwork into the darkest corners of the planet. It'll get it in front of people that would never in a million years have seen it otherwise. So if you are an artist and you don't have a website or don't have any online presence, I encourage you to do that. It's a very intuitive easy process now. There are programs out there that are putting up a website, and it makes it very easy and very quick. And it will always be a good a reference to people that want to see your work immediately. So get that done for sure. Social media, for me, I always looked at social media as just kind of a fun thing to do and just not something that could ever really propel my career forward as an artist. But I have to tell you, like, having garnered the audience that I have on Instagram now, I've quickly come to realize that this is how people talk to each other. It allows a tremendous amount of access to strangers into your life, into your work, and has become a very fundamental tool in my toolbox for promoting my work, promoting shows, promoting things like you're doing now with the food bank and the charity that you're doing. So I think it's of tantamount importance, and this is just how people talk to each other now. Like, and it surprised the hell out of me, to be totally honest with you. But it is something that I fully embraced. Now I know you're going to be disappointed. I'm not going to do dancing TikTok videos anytime soon. I know you want me to do it.
Oh, I thought
but
you were going to pull that
I'm
out.
not going to do it. I have a niece that tells me every time I go live on Instagram to talk about painting or to paint in front of people, how boring I am, how boring all of this is. Hi, Emily. I know you're listening. And then she'll go and show me a TikTok video of like some teenage boys dancing in Los Angeles. So.
Oh, well, I have a couple of questions here. And Robert Morris, our good friend, just said boomerang it.
Yeah, I saw that.
I love you, Robert. And he's going to join us in June, which I'm super excited. He's
a great artist and an outstanding human being. I like him a lot.
Do you always frame your canvas paintings, or how do you handle the sides of your paintings? So you paint the paintings? What do you do? I mean, the side of the canvas?
I don't. I leave the sides. I mean, all of my linen has been primed with lead priming and rabbit skin glued, so they're white sides, but I frame everything. I like to frame things because, to me, a frame puts a very clear delineation around a painting, and it feels more like an object to me once it gets framed.
Do you do that yourself, or you sell?
Well, this is a pro tip for you. Frame shops are very expensive. They're very expensive. Find a local carpenter in your area. They tend to work a lot cheaper, and the carpenter I have here in New York, Kristen, she is so mega talented and makes the best frames and panels for me.
Awesome.
She's great.
That's a great tip.
It's a great tip, I'm telling you. Yeah. Just go on Craigslist and find a carpenter, because these floater frames that I use for my paintings, they're very simple, but if you go through a carpenter or somebody local, it's going to be a lot less expensive for you.
So, question,
pro tips.
Do you have a printing press in your studio?
I do. I have an etching press in the next room. So my studio is set up basically into two rooms. The room that we're in right now is the painting room, and then there's a small little hallway, and that's where I do all my printing and my work on paper. So yes, I do have an etching press.
And then how do you go about deciding colors on your paintings?
Well, you saw my painting table earlier, so there's really no organization does not exist in this studio.
No rhyme or reason.
Well, it's not so much that. I pick colors based on just relationships, compositional relationships that I see in a painting. I see this color sort of mashed up against this color, and it's sort of scrubbed out, and there's a little line that maybe I did last week. And then I think, oh, I'm going to exploit that. I'm going to take that little part of the painting, and I'm going to build around it. And then I'll choose colors based on that relationship.
Let me go back. Do you use that printing press a lot? Did you just buy it recently? Like,
I've had it for a couple of years now. I use it probably every day.
Oh,
every day. Yep, because I like to crank out monotypes or little, bits of paper that I can then use as collage elements on my works on paper. So yeah, it gets a lot of use.
I love that. And then, what is your favorite tool?
I'm seeing if I can find it really quickly on the painting table. Many, many years ago, a paintbrush went south on me. And by that I mean the bristles all came off. Here it is. Oh. The bristles all came off. See?
Yes.
And the finial is now to the point where it's a very smooth tip. And what I end up doing with this particular tool, which is only like the little end broke off as well,
Yeah.
is I end up putting little gouge lines into wet painting or into wet paint that will like further delineate the colors that I'm using on the canvas by actually putting like a physical line between the two of them. Now, I've been using charcoal a lot to do the same job as this little, I don't even know what this is anymore, to be honest with you, but this tool has been very important to me in my career. So hopefully
do you have as a like collage versus paint in that big painting, for example?
well, there's no collage elements on the painting itself. It's all it's all
You
oil.
only do collage on paper?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All of my paintings are oil and charcoal, and that's it.
And why is that? Just is there a reason or not really?
No, I think it's the habit I fell into. You know, I'm doing work on paper, and doing collaged work on paper is really a relatively new thing for me. I would say only in the last couple of years has work on paper really come into play. I've always had a very narrow vision about who I was or who I am, and that vision was always I am just a painter and I do oil on linen, and that's it. And then I hate to bring him back up. I hope he's watching because I've mentioned him twice now. But my friend Lewis took me to a monotyping party at the Salmagundi Club over on 11th here in the city. And I was introduced to an etching press and monotypes. And I had never seen it before. I didn't know what it was. But I loved the process. I loved the hands-on. It really felt like painting on paper to me. And then to run it through a big press with like the two big metal rollers on it, like there was the kind of industrial nature of that. And then I went out and bought an etching press like right away. Like I couldn't help myself. So collage only comes into play with those works on paper.
Yeah, I swear I just started like monoprinting at home, literally like with what I had. I've never done it.
Yeah.
And the result is so surprising and so cool, and you can work so many ways about it. It's just, it's so
very
fun.
satisfying, isn't it? I know, I love it.
It is. It's so
See?
satisfying.
Go out there and have fun, right? Like go out there and learn something. But don't learn it from somebody else. Just go get it, you know? Go get it and, I don't know, screw it up a million times. Yeah, why not?
Experiment and just do what you can. And,
your days will be better for it. Your days will be better for it.
Oh, see, this is what I've been using. So it's a like a carton.
For like almond milk?
And then I go about it.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome.
So,
seriously, that's great. I love it. I love it.
So many cool things with it, and you just have to just go for it.
Hey, and you know what? Embarrass yourself. You know what I'm saying? Do something that you've never done before, and it may turn out to be complete rubbish, and just have fun.
I was laughing so hard that I even came up with that. I'm like, oh my God, this is hilarious.
No, I love it. It's terrific.
Like, oh my God, this is actually really fun. I should try that. I'm like, yeah, you should.
You should. Go out and do it. I mean, honestly, what's stopping you, really?
Exactly.
Everybody has an almond milk carton in their house. Go get one.
Exactly.
You know? Go dig through the trash.
As always, I'm going to put all of Robert's materials down, where you can find his catalog and how you can order that from him. And if you have any questions whatsoever, you can send them his way or my way. We'll make sure that one of us answers anything that you have to say. And do you have anything left to say for us?
I just want to say, again, thank you very much for being such an attentive audience to my work here on Instagram. And thank you for not only being attentive, but for being an active partner in it. Being a painter and being an artist, you will spend many, many, many hours of your life alone. There's a lot of solitude involved. There's a lot of getting into your own head. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty in what you're doing. Having strangers be as gracious and as generous as they've been with me on Instagram and through their emails and even through the exhibitions and the people I meet there has really made all the difference for me. And I certainly appreciate that. And I know that right now people are having a really hard time, and it's a very difficult time for everyone. I just want to as best I can to encourage people to continue doing their work, continue doing what's important to them. Be very safe, be very careful, and please, by all means, take care of yourself and the people that are around you. I have very few close people in my life because of what I do, because I'm here most of the time. Those people mean a tremendous amount to me, so make sure you take those people into consideration and keep them close. So.
Thank you. And you know what? This is so great that we have this candid, conversation. I consider you now one of my friends.
Oh, terrific.
And I am, I'm honored that you came, on board with this. But also, like I said, it's been an incredible community of artists. I feel like I'm a communicator, a connection person right now, connecting you with everyone else out there, and as well as others. And it's just been such a blessing, and I can't really tell you how much it's come back to me in ways that I never thought.
Well, listen, Sandra, honestly, kudos to you for putting this together. You have brought together a tremendous roster of artists, many of whom I know personally. And not only that, but the end game of donating all these works from these great artists to a worthy cause, certainly a very stand-up move on your part. And I'm just glad to be a part of it, and thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you so much, Robert. And
I'm going to run for office, Sandra. I'm pretty good at this. I can do this.
I think we're going to have a part two, Robert. I see it in the future.
Sure, I'm around. So, you know where to find me.
There's a lot of people involved. People stayed with us the whole time. I can't thank you enough. Thank you guys for your support, for being out there for us, for myself, for this incredible project that we're in. And just thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Robert.
Bye-bye. Thank you.